In 1959, a car company did something that no business textbook would ever recommend. They invented one of the most important pieces of safety technology in the history of the automobile, and then they gave it away for free to every single competitor they had. That invention is sitting in your car right now. You put it on without thinking. It clicks into place in under 2 seconds, and there is a very good chance it has already saved your life at least once, even if you never noticed the moment it happened. This is the story of the 3-point seatbelt, the man who built it, and why the company behind it walked away from what could have been the most profitable patent in automotive history. Let's go back to the 1950s for a second. Cars during this era were fast, stylish, and shockingly dangerous. Seatbelts existed, but they were nothing like what you're used to. Most cars only had a simple lap belt, if they had one at all. It was just a strap across your waist, nothing more. Here's the problem with a lap belt on its own. In a serious crash, your body still has somewhere to go. Your upper body folds forward at the waist like a hinge. Your head and chest slam into the steering wheel, the dashboard, or whatever happens to be in front of you. Doctors at the time had a name for the injuries this caused. They called it seatbelt syndrome. The belt was stopping you from being thrown from the car, but it was also breaking your spine and rupturing your organs in the process. So, in a strange way, early seatbelts were solving one problem while creating another one just as serious. At the same time, the roads themselves were getting more dangerous. More highways were being built. Cars were getting faster every year, and the sheer number of vehicles on the road was climbing fast, especially in the United States and across Europe. More cars at higher speeds on more roads meant crash injuries were becoming a genuine public health problem, not just an occasional bad headline. Volvo, the Swedish car manufacturer, had built its entire reputation on safety. It was baked into the company from the very beginning. So in 1958, they hired an engineer named Nils Bohlin to fix this exact problem. Bohlin wasn't a car guy. Before Volvo, he had spent years working on ejector seats for Saab, designing systems meant to get fighter pilots out of a plane alive in a fraction of a second. In that job, the problem wasn't just strapping a person in, it was making sure a human body, moving at incredible speed, didn't tear itself apart the instant it was suddenly stopped or launched. That background mattered more than you'd think. When you spend your career keeping pilots alive during violent, high-speed emergencies, you start to think differently about how a human body actually behaves when it's thrown around at extreme force. A car crash, from a pure physics standpoint, isn't all that different from an emergency ejection. Both involve a body going from high speed to a dead stop in a fraction of a second. Bohlin looked at the lap belt problem and realized the fix wasn't complicated engineering. It was actually about geometry. The body needs to be held in 2 places at once, not one. You need a strap across the hips, low, where the pelvis can handle the force. And you need a second strap across the chest and shoulder, angled diagonally so the upper body doesn't fold forward and slam into anything. The tricky part wasn't the idea. People had experimented with 2-point belts before. The tricky part was making it simple enough that an ordinary driver would actually use it every single time without thinking twice. Bohlin's version used one buckle positioned low near the hip so it could be fastened with a single motion. Click it in, and both straps were secure at once. That single design decision is the reason this belt became the standard used in almost every car on the planet today. It wasn't just safer, it was easy. And easy turns out to matter just as much as effective, because a safety feature nobody bothers to use isn't actually safe at all. In 1959, Volvo introduced the 3-point seatbelt as standard equipment in their cars. This alone was already ahead of most of the industry. Seatbelts weren't even required by law in most countries yet. But here's where the story gets genuinely unusual. Volvo owned the patent. They had every legal right to keep this technology locked up for themselves, forcing every other car manufacturer on Earth to either pay them for the rights or keep selling cars with the old, more dangerous lap belts. Given how much money was at stake, most companies in that position would have guarded the patent aggressively for as long as the law allowed. Volvo did the opposite. They opened the patent to the entire automotive industry, free of charge. Any manufacturer, anywhere in the world, could use Bohlin's design without paying Volvo a single dollar. Think about what that actually means from a business standpoint. This wasn't a small, forgettable feature. Within a few decades, this exact design became mandatory. mandatory, or close to it, in nearly every car sold worldwide. Volvo had the one piece of paper that could have forced every competitor on the planet to pay them indefinitely for decades, and they tore it up. Other manufacturers were slow to move at first. Some kept selling cars with the older lap-only belts well into the 1960s, treating the upgrade as optional or premium. But as governments around the world began studying crash data and eventually writing seatbelt laws into their vehicle safety codes, the three-point design became the obvious standard to build around. It was already proven, it was already free to use, and it was already sitting there waiting for anyone who wanted it. There was really no reason left to reinvent it from scratch. Volvo's own reasoning at the time was simple. The company's engineers believed that if this design could save lives, restricting it to Volvo owners alone wasn't just bad business. It was the wrong choice. Full stop. A great invention meant to protect people shouldn't only protect people who could afford one specific brand of car. So how many lives are we actually talking about here? Researchers have tried to put a number on it, and the estimates are staggering. Volvo itself has stated that the three-point seatbelt is believed to have saved more than 1 million lives since it was introduced. Independent studies on seatbelt effectiveness generally back this up, showing that a properly worn three-point belt cuts the risk of death in a crash by roughly 45 to 50% for front seat occupants. That's not a minor improvement. That's closer to a coin flip between surviving and not. And keep in mind, that's just the deaths. It doesn't count the millions of serious injuries the design has prevented along the way. The broken ribs, the crushed skulls, the spinal injuries that never happened because the load was spread properly across the hips and shoulder instead of concentrated entirely on the waist. To put that 45 to 50% figure into perspective, imagine two identical crashes, same speed, same angle, same car. In one, the driver is wearing a modern three-point belt. In the other, they aren't wearing one at all, or they're only wearing the old lap-style strap. In the second crash, the odds of walking away are cut nearly in half. Same accident, same forces, completely different outcome, based entirely on a single strap of fabric positioned correctly across the body. Nils Bohlin, the man who designed it, didn't become a household name the way you'd expect for someone whose work has saved this many lives. He kept working at Volvo for years afterward, continuing to focus on safety engineering. In 2002, he was inducted into the Automotive Hall of Fame, one of the few recognitions that came anywhere close to matching what he actually gave the world. Here's what makes this story stick with people once they hear it. We live in a world where companies patent nearly everything. Every tiny software feature, every slight design tweak gets locked behind legal protection so a competitor can't touch it without paying. That's simply how modern business tends to work, and honestly, in most cases, that's completely reasonable. But every so often, a company ends up holding something bigger than a normal business advantage, something that isn't really about market share at all. And Volvo in 1959 looked at exactly that kind of moment and chose differently than almost anyone else would have. The next time you get into a car, any brand, and that belt clicks into place across your hip and your shoulder in one motion, you're using a piece of 1950s Swedish engineering that a single company decided was too important to keep to themselves. It's such a normal part of getting into a car that almost nobody thinks about it anymore. You don't consider the physics behind why it's shaped the way it is. You definitely don't think about the engineer who used to design ejector seats, or the decision made in a boardroom in Sweden more than 60 years ago that quietly reshaped how every car on the road protects the people inside it. But it's there, every single time, doing exactly the job it was designed to do. And somewhere in the background of that ordinary click is one of the rarest decisions a company has ever made. A choice to give away the thing that could have made them the most money, because it also happened to be the thing that could save the most lives. It's worth sitting with that for a second. Most of the safety features we take for granted today, from airbags to backup cameras to automatic emergency braking, arrived because regulators eventually forced the entire industry to adopt them. This one was different. Nobody forced Volvo's hand in 1959. There was no law requiring them to share it, and no regulator demanding it. A group of engineers built something that worked, understood exactly how many people it could help, and decided that keeping it exclusive wasn't something they were willing to do. So the next time someone tells you a corporation is only ever thinking about its next quarter, remember the click of a seatbelt. Somewhere behind that small, forgettable sound is a decision that quietly outlasted every patent lawyer, every boardroom, and every competitor Volvo ever had.